Morena koutou, welcome to our council meeting for the last day of May 2022, commencing at 9 o'clock. We are starting with an opening karakia from Deputy Mayor Shona Brown.
Welcome to all those present and all those attending this meeting.
Thank you very much. We're all present, so there are no apologies. Are there any declarations of any interest in relation to the open meeting agenda items, councillors? Item 8. Thank you. Just noted. We will also have a COVID framework update included in item 13. Just a verbal update in item 13. But before we begin the main meeting, we have Kathy Cook has come to join us in the public forum. Kathy, please come forward and sit with us here. Thank you very much. It's good to see you here again. I know you've been to visit us one time before in the council meeting. So we have 5 minutes for public forum, and if you would talk with us and share your thoughts, and we may have some questions for you at the end.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good morning all. My name is Kathy Cook and I'm one of your ratepayers. I moved to Opotiki in September 2020. The reason I moved here was the lovely weather, a lot of lovely people, beautiful town, and it's going places. I found a house that was ideal for me going forward. When I say going forward, I mean going forward into old age, dare I say. A little bit about myself. I'm a fashion designer, dressmaker and seamstress. And prior to moving to Opotiki, I was a retail business owner in Pakitani for 12 years. Within 6 months of moving here, I had to undergo major surgery on my foot and was required to be completely non-weight bearing on that foot for 4 months, which I had to use a knee scooter in that time. Some of you might remember when I came along a year ago, I was on the knee scooter.
That's right.
Yeah, and on that particular day, I nearly tipped off it out here, trying to get up the gutter outside where we were parked so I could come into the meeting because the one and only disabled car park was taken. So that was a bit scary. I was just about on the pavement. Living and using a knee scooter for 4 months in Opotiki gave me the perfect opportunity to discover this town is not disability friendly at all. It is extremely frustrating and humiliating when you cannot enter the premises. I already knew several people in Opotiki before moving here, and I've now met and become friends with several other people who are aged 70 to 95, so there's an ageing population here. A lot of people are retiring to this area, and there are retail shops and hospitality outlets that is absolutely impossible to get into if you're disabled, using a walker on crutches, in a wheelchair, or in my case on a knee scooter, which was a means to a surgery recovery. There's even a store in town with a chain rather than a handrail by the entrance steps, which I'm sure wouldn't even be compliant. I could not get up the steps with my knee scooter at all, so fortunately I didn't have to try swinging on the makeshift handrail and risk falling. I feel with all the upgrading going on in Opotiki at the present time, we need to make provision for the ageing population that are living here, or people planning on retiring to this lovely part of New Zealand. all I ask is, can we cater for the mobility impaired in this town? And are the council planners considering the measures that need to be taken to provide for the disabled living here? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors?
Could you, have you written down particular areas that need attending to?
Well, there's a lot, there's, two places that I'm aware of that you can't get into because of steps. They're restaurants or pubs, or you can go there and eat. You know, there's other shops, they haven't even catered with, for a ramp or even a handrail to get up the steps. So, you know, is there a council requirement to check, make sure that they're sort of compliant with that sort of thing?
Are we able to answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So under the Building Act, it is a requirement for new builds to provide for access. I guess the issue we have is we have a whole load of old buildings, and I know nobody likes the earthquake prone building requirements, but this is one of the things that has to be addressed as part of the earthquake prone requirements. It's a work in progress, I guess.
Triggered by the new build.
Yeah, so it covers the new build, but like I say, there's so many old ones there that just is impossible. I met a lady the other day, which came to me for dressmaking, and her brother lives here in Hauraki and he's in a wheelchair permanently, and she said he just finds it so frustrating. You just can't get into places.
I just want to say thank you for coming forward and raising that with us again. You know, a lot of things were highlighted from Kate Tyler as well, when she became reliant on her wheelchair, and spaces that she wasn't able to access, and footpaths was one of them as well. Trying to cross the road and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate you've taken the time for this. Really, really good. Thank you very much. We turn to page 4, confirmation of the minutes from the council meeting from the 19th of April. Are there any matters of correctness anybody wishes to address? All happy with that? I have someone to move and second that we confirm these minutes. Debbie has moved. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Shona. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Page 15, we're looking at the minutes from our Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on the 14th of February. Again, any matters of correctness? Somebody like to move that we receive these? Debbie? I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, and carried. Item 3, we're looking at the Coast Community Board meeting minutes, page 21. Any, you'd like to move those? No, you're all happy with contents, etc.?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So moved by Louis, seconded by Lynn. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, carried. A little bit short on the numbers in that meeting, Louis.
Just,
Yep,
just the one, but we still have things done.
yes. Okay, so page 27, we have the minutes from the Ohiwa Harbour Implementation Forum. This was the first time we'd met in quite some months in person, which was really good. And probably for the first time in all of the 9 years that I've been on this implementation forum, that I've actually heard that progress has been made in the quality of the water going into the Ohiwa Harbour after years and years of data taken, etc. Some really good work being done around there. So I just, the minutes are well worth a read. But there are no matters of correctness I need to assume, and just wish to put those minutes. Do I have a seconder, please? Help pass these through.
Through the meeting, there is just on page 28, it's just the spelling error there, where they accept the apologies. Yeah, I'm not a debit, well, I might be, but.
Very good. I hadn't spotted that. I'll send that through. Thank you. Cool.
Probably.
And seconder was Shona. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against. Moving on to item 5. Page 37 is the mayoral report. Things don't seem to be slowing down. And I'm happy to move that we receive this report. I have a seconder, please. Fighting amongst the women today. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Carried. Our quarterly report is on page 43. Billy. Morena. Please take it as read.
Yes, take it as read. That's pretty much what's come from the risk insurance agenda. Julie, any questions on this report?
Any questions or comments, councillors? So we're shaping along reasonably well then.
Yes, there's mentioned there regards to capital expenditure to the 3 quarters to March on page 48, and progress to date to March, with a expectation of some catch up to do within this 4th quarter.
Right.
Some of those works.
Yes.
Mentioned in here.
If I could just comment that.
Yes, please.
Given everything we've been through over the last 2 years, with all the capital expenditure we have, the issues around COVID, issues around resource consents, with everything going on, I just wanted to congratulate the managers and just say what an awesome job we've done to actually keep it all in line. It is. I think Philip said it in the Risk Insurance Committee meeting. He attributed that to the Chief Executive, but actually it's the team that operates, the management team and the finance team. So just well done, you guys. It's pretty outstanding in a year of, or the last 2 years of chaos, to be able to be, what, 55k in deficit there. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Mm.
We aim to be at a 0 position, and we're just about there. It's pretty good.
Thank you. I endorse your words there, Aileen. Thank you, Billy. Steve, would you like to put these? Do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, just a question.
Oh, good, please.
What do you think is causing the softening in the consents?
I think there's been, I suppose, a squeeze on some of the, with regard to some of the supply chain issues, and the effects that has on contractors and the whole chain from the process of consenting through to the actual realisation of the practical works. But Gerard, you might want to have a more to say asking.
Yeah, we've just, so a lot of, we had a promo about 2 or 3 months ago to the agents, and they have got lots of things on their books, but they can't submit a consent because they haven't got a report through from the various different professionals, geotech and other things, so we've actually been encouraged to put consents in, and I haven't got the exact figure, but got about 65 in this year, last year we had about 85 for the total, so there's a few less, but there's definitely, they're in the background, so we're aware of that coming through. But building consents, that's the revenue for building consents is up, which kind of is that 80 coming through from last year and the year before. So it's kind of goes in a bit of a cycle.
Yes.
Just one on the rates arrears, what percentage of that is actual multi-lend? 2.9 million.
Percentage of that is multi-lend. I don't have this percentage in front of me, so I can keep it going forward.
A large percentage.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, majority of it is. And we're still in the process of doing some of that, those adjustments as per the amendment to the Act and the government rating last year. So we're still going through that process, and we are actually receptive to what we actually just updating our remission policy as per the amendment to reflect the changes.
Can I just ask with regards to the write-offs? They sort of around about the same amount every year, aren't they?
I thought this was
On
lower.
the
Historically,
odd variation.
they're pretty consistent.
So are they the same owners that are responsible for?
Yeah, and this is what the changes to the amendment to the Act is looking to do, is to reduce a whole bunch of that. We can conclude that they are not reachable, unable to be paid, that for the sake of all the administration associated with accruing them and through debtors, and then writing them up for 6 years, and then even the GST portion of that after 6 years, it's easier to just, why we're going through the whole process, we could just, we know we're not going to get it, make the process more efficient, and not have to go through the whole rigmarole and what the GST to come back to. So yeah, it's all about making that whole part efficient.
So that means that more of the pieces of land will be given remissions because they fit their criteria.
Yes, rather than us holding a provision for them and doing that provision for bad debt every year and then doing a statutory write-off after 6 years. Let's just make it, change to non-rated status, and then it just activate all that noise associated with
Yes.
rates, arrears, write-offs, and statutory write-offs.
That's been a long time coming, hasn't it, really, as an amendment? It particularly affects our district.
Yes. Sure answer.
It's a paper transaction though, isn't it? It's money we've never been able to collect, never will be able to collect. It's simply a paper transaction of not having that transaction entering the system.
Yes.
Yeah, although I suppose the opportunity loss of the interest that we would have gained from that, the GC portion of that arrears.
Thank you.
So the more support we get for development down the coast, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's part of the remission policy changes to
Kiwifruit development.
incentivize, perhaps incentives for people to make their land productive. So it's all part of the policy.
What's happening down there, and development happening down the coast, so it's a win-win.
Steve, would you be happy to put that? Yes? Seconder, please. Thank you, David. All those in favour of receiving our quarterly report, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And now we move to item 7 with our added paper on our table, which is our 22-23 annual plan information. Page 51 through. Thank you, Peter. Welcome. Morning.
I will take the report as read. There's a few items I would like to highlight on there. You'll all be aware of the process that we've gone through getting to this point. We've held a number of workshops where we've considered options to mitigate rate rises. We are in a very high inflation environment, and we're seeing that in our own costs. That's detailed in the report here. Of the 4 options that councillors came up, we found that one of them is effective in reducing the immediate rate burden, which is for some of our grant funded assets to consider the opportunity for subsidies or grants when it comes time to renew those. So that means we won't be fully funding the removal of those assets over the next 30 years. The impact of that was about a 1% reduction in the proposed rates rise. That's brought us down to the 6.8%, which is currently in the information document. So the proposal here is to go out to the community seeking input on the information document, and that will feed into future planning. Because there are no significant changes proposed in this, we're not required to go through a more consultative process. It's defined in the Act. So are there any questions on the report or on the information document?
I thought it was very concise and clear. Thank you, Peter.
In the information document, you'll see that there's a example properties on page 8 with the distribution of rates rises. You'll see that the percentage increase across them is relatively uniform compared to previous years. That's because it's the impact on council's costs are seen across the board, and so there's no one area that's being hit particularly hard. So that does feed into most of the impact on the general rate rather than target rates.
So we've quite seen significant rate rises for properties around the 800, 900,000 plus a year. I think their rate rises are quite significant.
As a percentage, you're in line with all the others. It's just because of the way we rate on capital value.
I think if anything, the paragraph of explanation on page 8 needs to be in bold, so everybody gets to read that, I think. Yes, it is good that there's no, big swings and lows down around across the way, but understanding the increases of costs, etc., is actually really important.
The other item of note for the community is that Bellamy Regional Council are collecting their own rates next year. That's detailed on page 7. So the invoice that comes from council will look different to previous years.
Can I just ask on your page that the breakdown, third one down has got Hector Woodlands property. There's 8%, and the next line is the same Hector Woodlands property with a higher capital value, but 7%.
Yeah, so that's just because of, I guess there's some rounding within these percentages.
Okay.
So one might be 7.9 and the other 8.1. There will be some small differences just because of under your AGCs. Within the actual change, whether it's comes up.
There probably wouldn't be a property in Williams that's valued at $350,000.
So the important thing to note is that our rating revaluation hasn't been done for a number of years, and the rates are struck based on those rating valuations, current market valuation. The next rating valuations were later this year, will feed into the next year's rates, which is why we've used the old values.
We will always do a full Māori version of our this entire Māori.
Question to Anna.
I know we're pointing out to our community about the change around the regional council rates. And I know then it, that change is actually causing quite a bit of consternation amongst our elderly residents. Been getting quite a few phone calls around how they're going to be able to change. They can't come in, they're not on internet, etc., etc. I did finally notice there was a phone number on one of the pamphlets that went out, but I think probably we need to let the regional council know that they have to do a lot more in getting the information to our community better as to how they can change what they're doing. And I've had several little chats and visits with elderly people who pay fortnightly, etc. And that's to cover all of the rates, and now they're having to split them. But I can go back and say, please ring the regional council. But their information is quite hard to do and quite hard to change. So yeah, I'm hoping we'll get a lot more publicity before they put their first bill out in August, October. I think they're going to, and paying it at one go is a bit tough, isn't it, really? But that's okay. That's for them to sort then.
What's the increase are they looking at?
We haven't heard. We haven't heard, actually. We'll find out.
Generally, they have quite a low increase in the general rate, but the targeted rate is the one that's been going up at significant amounts each year.
That's certainly one for people.
And it's our town people who get hit so hard with the targeted rates, Steve.
It very much flies under the radar. But Peter, you've been working with the regional council
Yes,
quite closely, haven't you?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
We are working with regional council around this transition process. For those who are on a direct debit with us, that should be quite an easy change. It's where people have payments set up through the bank where they need to have going and setting up a new payment to them separately and adjusting their current one. But we can raise everything as a area. So.
Right, thank you. And will they have a presence here? A place where people can go and pay their rates, or that they're trying to do it all online?
Yeah, I believe you're also working with the post shop to accept payments through there, but can you get a bit more information?
Our front desk team has been very good at trying to find out what the answers are for coming in and trying to get as much information for people who've got queries.
Oh, thank you. On behalf of our community, thank you. Yes, it's
There's one thing in this paper here. It's got inside it, it's got that we're gonna take over the management of our development. But it's got no costings of what it's actually gonna cost us to take over that management role. So should not that, we had a rough estimate of what sort of rate increase we're gonna be looking at if we do take over the management role of the hub.
So I guess this is in relation to the next year, and that's my understanding, we're not expecting to take them over within this year, so that will come when the next year plan, change the next long-term plan.
long-term plan, but has it got any costings to it?
I just take that look at
What Peter's saying is this document is about the coming financial year, not the year after.
It says that we're signing an agreement here with MB, like over the management.
Yes, you have.
No, I didn't sign it.
You resolved to sign it.
No, I don't think so. Not to my knowledge.
November 2021, I believe.
Hmm.
20, sorry. 21. Yeah. Yes, council resolved to sign that document and it's signed. And you'll see a sentence in here that says over the next 12 months, we'll be negotiating the shape of that and what that looks like, and it will be in the next LTP for consultation with the community.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? So we're receiving your report and adopting this and approving it to go out for public release to seek general feedback.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 8, Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. And we've noted conflict of interest from Councillor Steve. Would you like to?
Yep, okay, so the report's fairly self-explanatory. And it's a receive only item. We've had some inquiry from Kitty Allen's office about I guess, about the lack of success under the IAF for her whole electorate. And we've had a meeting scheduled twice now that's been cancelled. So the document you see attached, we actually put together before we got the outcome and finalised it just after we got the outcome and fed that across to Kelly's office. And you'll see we've reshaped the argument around climate change and around the fact that we know there's a significant amount of funding coming through the climate change announcements that have been made over the last few weeks. So Kent Dustin's been advising on that. And Stace has been working with a couple of the landowners to have a look at what kind of short-term options we can look at, but still keeping an eye on the long-term outcomes.
Ironically, both cancellations for our discussion with the Eastern Bay mayors with Kitty was around a weather event where she had to go and deal with an emergency. So I say ironically because it kind of highlights where we're at with our increasing climate change. So she's received the information, but we haven't yet had the opportunity, the three mayors and Kitty Tapu, to continue that discussion around housing. But she has a very thorough, and I've had a good talk with her, the person in charge of the housing area. They're keeping very close tabs on where the houses are going up, who's getting houses, who's doing what, etc. in the Eastern Bay plus Gisborne side. So she's actually working very hard on our behalf in this quarter for the whole of her electorate, which is really pleasing to see.
Probably one other thing just to note is that yesterday, Sarah Jones started a position with Kāinga Ora. And so we hope to get a little bit more information as to what's gone on inside this process and how we might access funding into the future.
It was quite funny, I was on a call the other day and somebody mentioned that they were on the board for the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. And I said, why did you decline 40? It went very quiet.
My personal point of view is So I'm quite happy that we got 10 down, because I never really felt happy that we were aiming to aiming at putting our major housing development up to it, because I've always been a believer that affordable housing is never going to solve that issue by moving up. Affordable housing has got to be down here on the flats, and that's where we should have been focusing, I believe. So I was quite, I suppose I was chuffed that we did actually get 10 down. I wasn't chuffed about the amount of money we spent on the application, but from a personal point of view, I think we now need to redirect ourselves onto affordable housing, which our people can afford to buy. They wouldn't have been able to afford to buy it. I'm talking about our forestry workers, our truck drivers, our heavy food workers, those type of people. That we are focused, my personal view is that's where our focus should be.
No, I'm quite upset that we were declined. Because it's an opportunity to grow, and I understand what you're saying around affordable housing, Barry, but we can't build down here anymore. It's really expensive as it is for people to live. The regional council will just keep increasing rates as they can to protect those houses. It's going to end up being more for them to live down here than it would be up there.
Global orders building in town. So why they're building in town?
But overall, the development needs to be moved out of the township.
Well, that's actually for developers to decide where they build, and they kind of always building everywhere. We've got an item coming in the next, so we're saying one thing, doing another thing, supporting building, the sale yards. So, I see what Barry's saying, I see what Louis saying, but yeah, we're doing one thing and saying another. So yeah, that's, we're just going to go on to the next thing. Retreating from the town. We've done this to our people once before, pushed them out of town, and sort of feels like it's repeating itself.
Well, we've got quite different levels within town, and we know that our northern parts of the town are the bits that will be the most affected
That's
more dramatically the soonest, and we are looking to really concentrate on framing the next 30 years, 50 years that we need to start that now.
And we're going to look at moving the roads and everything.
All of that, and that is certainly coming through with the climate adaptation bill that's being formed at the moment. So a lot of our next decisions, and I'm just thinking about the meeting I attended with the regional transport, is the emphasis now around climate change is ensuring that the resilience of what infrastructure we do is actually going to be climate change proof. And the call from us at local government level and also through regional to central government is that is going to have to be a real team effort to get that right, because if we're going to build with resilience, it means often the more expensive projects. If you think about roading, where are we going to move the roads to? How high can we put them up? The costs on all of that is part of what we have to be looking at as we go forward. And ensuring that we are going to get to a point where we are probably unable to service, unless we've got amphibious houses or ones on floats. We'll get to that point, not in our lifetimes, but we're planning for the future. I think that's quite important.
With the funding application that we had, we were never going to get it 100% funded in any case, so it's always going to be a burden on our ratepayers. And when we did our public submissions, the vast majority of Puketai, Woodlands area people didn't want any part of it, so we sort of went against the grain a little bit there. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's back where it was at the beginning, so. That's the way I see it. We do need to concentrate on where we can house, put in affordable housing. We are people, the ones that people that with the housing.
Everybody needs housing. All right, any other questions about this report? Just been received. Thank you, Debbie. Seconder, please. And all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? One abstention. Thank you. Item 9. Page 69, request from Opotiki Volunteer Coast Guard. Morning.
Yeah, so this is the letter that we received from Coast Guard in relation to redeveloping their existing site or another alternative area on the wharf site. So, yeah, I'll take the report as read.
So basically, they've done their feasibility study and they're wanting to rebuild where they are.
Yeah, demolish the existing building. So there's two options: there's demolish the existing building, rebuild where they are, or work with us through the master plan. And if another location along that wharf site is more preferable, then we'll continue the discussion on that. But they just want confirmation or otherwise from council that they're happy for the building to be demolished and also for them to relocate a new building there. And there's lots of things that still need to be addressed, RMA, building consents, all of that. But if we don't have the initial, or if they don't have the initial yet, where it's supportive, then there's no point in them investing any more time and resources in this kind of option.
So there's step 1.
Yeah.
Any questions, councillors?
Yeah, I definitely won't agree to the demolition of the old Coast Guard building. I mean, we've done that before, we've got a massive backlash. So I think these guys are putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, I fully support the Coast Guard and what they do as volunteers, but I think they're taking a major step forward here. And I think we're not ready to accept something of that sort of magnitude at the moment. It's a giant step forward to demolish a building and then put a $4 million building up, whatever they want to do in a flood-prone area. Yeah, so I would be agreeing to what they ask at this stage. And the fact that they haven't even got the funding for it yet. So the demolition of the Coast Guard building would be at the cost of the council.
And so we have been talking to them in relation to funding and seeking to assist them, not council assistance, but talking to other funding partners for what we've done with the library and other projects. And yeah, they need a bit of a steer and a go forward from council so they can then move forward with their funding applications. And they have done quite a lot of work already. They've done geotech work, and done viability and feasibility on the site, and they've got the plans drawn up. And I don't think they're looking to build the full scheme, the 3-story optimum scheme, because they know that getting the funds for that probably won't be achievable. So what they're looking at is a staged approach. So they build it in 4 stages. So they get the initial shed bit built so they can put the new boat into it. And then they can, it's also more manageable in terms of going for funders. You go, I need $500,000 to do stage 1, and then you can build it up. So I don't think they're looking to do it all in one hit unless all the funding lined up, which is unlikely, given the experiences we've had with funders and projects.
So they're asking us if we agree to them demolishing the old Coast Guard building. That's what they're asking the council to agree to.
Yeah, so what they're asking is, can we develop the existing building, so demolish it and rebuild either that building or another site that the council chooses that comes out as part of the master plan along that whole area. So they're just really looking for a bit of go forward, because if council says no to the demolition, then is it no to the demolition, but you can build somewhere else on that wharf site, and then that will have to incorporate all of that into the master plan as well. Or if it's no to the demolition and no to anywhere else on the wharf site, then they'll have to find somewhere else to realise their aspirations.
Through the chair, I just want to
make a couple of comments. I fully support the Coast Guard and the ambitions for what they want to do. I can't support knocking down a building, not knowing if we can build. I don't think they have any objection to the whole of the Whitikau Reserve as marine services zone. I would like to see, we should have possibly been doing this 12 months ago. I can't recall when they came to see us with the plans. I think it was about 18 months ago, if I recall correctly when I saw the plans, but that whole area, there's 200 metres, there's 220 metres between the old boat ramp and the existing building. Only probably Barry and I are the ones that are old enough to be having used the old boat ramp. So there's ample land on that side. I would like to see something in writing from the regional council supporting the idea, given the fact that we just talked about retreating, a building actually on the riverside of the stop bank. I can't get my head around being agreeing to that. So I'd like to see land set aside just so they know where they're going. And I'm sure you'll get no objection from any of the locals, certainly from us. If we set aside land somewhere else in that reserve, they can go ahead and do that. When they're finished, we can either demolish or then some other person use that building. I was a yacht club for many years, not a Coast Guard, and I was part of the founding team that started the Coast Guard and the Susie Butler. And it was just a radio that coordinated rescues in private boats. But yeah, I fully support them being given land available so they can move forward and build their shed, whether it be on the outside of the stop bank, inside the stop bank, have their own boat ramp. Totally support that theory, but I can't support just knocking down a building and I hope we'll actually rebuild. So it's not hope, they wouldn't knock down the building unless there was something confusing to go back in its place. So I don't know, they're not envisaging knocking it down and just leaving it flat. There's one, they don't have the money to do that. And if you knock down, put a building back in its place. Well, I'm just trying to highlight with the land they have, they need a shed for the new boat. That's part of the conditions they've got it. If we don't set aside land to say, yeah, for sure, either have it on, they might get turned down to have it built on the existing spot. We don't know. I know how difficult it is to even build it. They're having issues now with buildings erected on stop banks in Whakatane and so I just would like something from them to indicate not just a verbal, I want something in writing, to us. So we agreed to just get rid of one of our buildings. It's not fit for purpose, they're saying for them, but it could be fit for purpose for someone else. But I'd like to see them have something in concrete so they can move forward and start applying for funding, build a big fit for purpose shed, store the boat in the meantime. Then if they can build on the riverside of the stop bank, I'd be impressed. So I'm not, this is a request that's coming from Coast Guard, so I'm not advocating for them, it's coming from them, but I've had discussions with them. So they have obviously done their options analysis, looking at 4 different sites around town, and they've decided on the Wharf Acre is the best site for them. So what they're now looking for is, can we move forward with that site? And issues at the regional council, the drain, all of that, that's all to be resolved. And it's not set in stone that if council agree to them in principle to demolish the building and go there, that will ever happen. Because there's all these other hurdles they have to overcome. But this is just the initial, okay, now we've reached the gate, can we go through or not? And if council is fully opposed to it, then they'll have to find somewhere else. In terms of other options and of storing the boat, they have looked at other options around town, and this is where they like the primary option. And again, the funding, you can knock a shed up, but that's money that they could have spent on their new development. That's what they're looking to achieve rather than having temporary measures. We did discuss temporary measures, potentially moving over where handby units are there with them, but they've obviously this is how they want to move it forward.
Have they or have we had any discussions with Victoria around it, considering the claims going forward? As well, what part of Whitikau is going back to the
Yeah, so it's not, this area isn't going back to Iwi, a little bit further up is. can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it's a decent chunk that goes back. There's not a great deal of land between the Coast Guard building, the North Coast Guard building, and this. There's some of that's going back probably about half. But again, it's, it could go across the whole site, and they're not saying that they're fixated on the current building, but obviously if the current building's there, then it limits how they get access to the other side and how it links into the master plan as well. So that's what I'm looking for, kind of go forward, to then hit up funding partners, start having a discussion with regional council. So we've shown the regional council obviously the master plan, and we've highlighted the existing building and potentially a bit further up next to the boat ramp, that's where the Coast Guard goes. So they're looking at that and provide feedback which will feed into the go forward essentially, if that's what council agree.
Do you agree in principle with the, looking at the option of David area?
Yes, and they've got their steps well set out on page 86 as part of their plan.
So they're only seeking in principle, basically, aren't they?
Yes.
Subject to a bunch of things being satisfied. So
Yeah.
with any proposal ever, why would you start unless you have the landowner access sorted?
Mm.
And also they can't tap into the funding unless they have landowner
They have the agreement.
So there's a whole range of different things that need to be worked through. This is like we will just step one.
Council could put conditions on any approval.
And any decisions in terms of them actually putting that on there, that would all have to be addressed as well. Financial costs. It's just, can we move forward with this? So we can go to funders and say we have council on board, and then it's working through with the master plan that if the options are use the existing building, then that's put in the master plan, the plan's designed around that. Or if it's put over, if you want to keep the building, they're not allowed in there, then they have to look at other options on that wall site and how that then ties in. So it all moves through, so.
Chief, so you're
Yes.
saying that this would be the first step, and anything else they want to do, they would keep coming back to us, like if they said, now we want to get rid of the shed, what building they've got, they would then come back to us and say, do you want to move it or demolish it? Is that how it would work?
So I think how it would work is if we said, okay, you can knock the building down, so we would then work the master plan with Coast Guard's building. Once we've had feedback from the regional council and all the other parties where the most appropriate place is, prior to getting the resource consent in the master plan, we say this is where it should go, and then you'd have the car park and everything else designed around it. But if you don't want the building to be demolished, then that's fine, but then that limits where they can go. And it also limits how we design the roof area as well, which you have the building there, and you have to put the Coast Guard somewhere else, which then changes.
They can demolish or move the building, that's two options, isn't it? They could remove.
Oh, yeah, sorry, demolish to me is just moving it off-site, but yeah, I think they looked at people taking it from them.
So the council would own the land, but Coast Guard would own the building.
That all needs to be negotiated out.
It's reserved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically we administer it.
Everybody owns it. Yeah.
Have they looked at building a
Tricky.
shed on their, say, the camping ground side to store their new boat and still utilising the existing Coast Guard building and doing it up a bit? But it's not a big deal to just tow a boat from where the camping ground area is, just up and over and launch it, is it?
I think
The issue at the moment is like what Dave said, is they've got to find storage for their new boat ASAP. So that plan there is probably 5 years out if it's ever implemented. So don't they need a storage right now?
I think they've sorted out temporary storage, and they've obviously decided how they want to move forward.
Yes.
As a Coast Guard, and what they're asking council is, do you want us to move forward in this way or not? And I don't think it's for us to point out other places where they can go, because if that's their choice.
I actually disagree with that community on, it is their choice to make. That's their wish, but it's we drive where they go, but it has to go back to all of Whakatūria, not just Whakatūria, but all of them do. And you'll have no objection to.
What do you mean by?
Well, not just Whakatūria, it's everyone. So they won't have any objection from the wider community to be rebuilding something there. I think they need something, we should have done this a year ago. so they could at least know where they're at, they could be a long way down the track. It's just unfortunate it's come to, now they've got the boat, you know.
I think they have taken this time to actually get their plan sorted properly. This is what I see is a really good feasibility study, a plan that they have determined is the right way forward for them. Probably with the, you know, and they're now beginning. They've started. They've had their idea for some years, and now they're starting the plan. And we are needing to say yes, we agree with their plan, or not. And all we're doing today is receiving the report and supporting their proposal for redevelopment on that site. That will take a while, but they have their plans in place. And they have to have an okay from the council because we're looking after that land.
Also, they want to tie it into the master plan as well, so it's.
Good.
It reads as one. So
Yes.
that's the intention.
Great.
Jared, there's some options. So obviously there's some concerns around the table. Is there an option to put some conditionality on it or ask that a councillor sit in on the committee meetings or some sort of way that we can manage the concerns around the table?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of negotiation in terms of the ownership of the building and the land. There's a whole heap, different things that we haven't thought about at this moment in time. So it would be more build a skeleton up and then put it back to council, and we could have council's part in the discussions.
Because our master plan, if you look at it, Jeremy, a lot of the focus on our master plan is around the Coast Guard, whereas I believe the master plan focus should be on our fisher people. So we need to grow, as the need requires, because we're really going into an area where we don't know how many people are going to come to Turkey. But as the need requires, then we grow with it. But to my way of thinking, the master plan says we're going to be this big, but we don't really know we're going to be that big because we don't know how many people are going to use the Peterson property boat ramp, and we don't know how many people are still going to use the Whakatane and Hiwa Harbour boat ramps because they're there. But we've got a boat ramp in the Hauraki that's more than adequate. So I think we need to refocus on the need of the boat operators first, and then the Coast Guard can grow with it.
That's what we do when we go out with our master plan and
Yeah.
working through all the stakeholders.
Well,
So just in terms of the master plan, I mean, the options that we put out to consultation, we went through in a workshop with councillors, and that was the options that you wished to go out to consultation on. So this is.
but the Coast Guard building never came up in our consultation. In our workshop,
It definitely came up in the workshop. We discussed it.
we knew they wanted something.
Definitely come up because we had the options, and that's why I said the options we're looking at is on their existing site or up on the wharf site. And I also said that they'd be looking to put a report to council, which this is the report. We discussed all of that at the workshop.
I think it needs more discussion myself.
Can we come back to this particular report, please? Are we wanting to add any recommendation to this at all?
Chair, can I just ask, please, above the recommendations, there's a bold, we call authority. Council has the authority to make the required decision. What decision is that?
Number 2.
That we support the Coast Guard's proposal for redevelopment of the site as set out in the attached letter.
That's already recommendations.
So what it's saying is that councillor, the administrator of the reserve, therefore it has the function and the power and the ability to make the decision in proposed resolution number 2. So we have the council has the legal ability to make the decision as an administrator of the reserve. That's what that means.
Right,
Could something be added then to the recommendation that they work in with council at each step?
Well, that's what they're intending to do,
Yeah,
because, well, they can't,
so they can't do
it has to be,
it.
it has to be working in with us. So we're working with us on the master plan and working with our property team on doing whatever deals required to make the building work. And then also working with us what funders that we go and see. Because the funders will need landowner agreement approval to go forward.
Because I'm quite happy with it, but obviously some others aren't, so I'm just trying to make a suggestion to tighten it up somehow.
do you think we need to state that? Even though it's a given? You'd like to see it in writing?
I'm not comfortable with point two. Like I fully support them in the aspirations, their goals. And I don't think we'll have any objection if we find them somewhere. The objection we'll have from the community. Being part of the voting community, you get a little bit of stigma attached to being, it's not, most people struggle to buy a fishing rod, let alone a boat in our town. Okay, so you do get a bit of negative comment just because you've got a nice boat. Doesn't matter if you've worked hard and purchased it. No problem at all supporting them. My recommendation is following the letter, they want to demolish the building. That's where we'll have pushbacks from some parts of the community. I'd like to see it, if you can do whatever you want, but I would like to have the urgency put on them finding the suitable location. To move forward. But it doesn't necessarily mean knocking down that current building and rebuilding it there. I can't remember that, how much land is in there, but it's their entire reserve and all of that's got back.
So
There's the marine services zone, so this can go anywhere in here.
it is what you're reading. So I take it it's the bit that says we're approaching council because part of the process of redeveloping the site involves receiving permission from council as the landowner to demolish, remove the current building and redevelop the site. Right? They haven't said they're going to demolish, remove. They're saying that they need permission from the council if they want to move forward with whatever their plan is. I think what you're doing is kind of almost putting a full stop, demolish, remove the building, full stop, or that actually isn't their plan. Am I? Receiving permission from council to move forward with our plans is a key component to the successful delivery of the project, which is their whole, good plan and steps that they're following through.
And so my suggestion was to try and cement that what's a given and have to keep going backwards, that it's they will keep going backwards each step.
How would you like to word that, Councillor Debbie?
I'm happy for them to move forward. I'm happy to give permission for them to move forward, but that they, on the condition that they, with each step, they check in with council. And it doesn't necessarily have to go through a meeting, it's that keeping up with communication.
So I think their fundamental thing is that for them to move forward, they need to know if they can go on the existing site, the existing building, and if to do that, they have to demolish it or move it. They're also open to putting the building somewhere else on that wharf site and working with our master plan, the regional council, to see where the best site is. But ultimately, it's for their choice as to where they move to, because they're the ones who'll be building it and using it. So their request is, can we have an open build? Are you supportive of what's going in there? Knocking down your building if we want to. If we're not going to knock your building down, then can we go somewhere else on the site? And if we go somewhere else on the site, we're working with your master plan, so you can keep the old building, but on the building as well, and have it all circulated.
Jared, wouldn't it be better if they went to regional council and asked if it was a feasibility, or was feasible for them to build there? Because the regional council might say, no, no one's building in a flood-prone area, so that kiboshes the whole idea. But they haven't been to the regional council and given permission to do that yet.
But, well, they have been to the regional council, they have spoken to them.
And they give them full permission to build it.
Well, they've spoken to the rivers and drainage team about the stop bank, and they've given them, they said, yeah, that's all good. They know there's some engineering challenges, so they've designed the building, knowing that they're in a floodplain and the basement will get flooded out. They obviously can't, the regional council aren't going to commit to anything unless it's a resource consent. And yeah, the bylaws, the resource consent as well, there's issues, but that's what we have to work through with them.
So it's going and getting a regulatory approval is a challenge if you haven't got the landowner approval. You just wouldn't.
And it's just how we then go forward with the master plan as well. So we know that council is supportive or not of the Coast Guard being there. If you say no, then obviously the Coast Guard, that changes how that whole wharf area operates. Because in the future, you're saying it's not going to operate with the Coast Guard building there. So they just want to know, can we operate a building here, and all the other stuff will get ironed out. But if council say no to their request, then they're saying, effectively they're saying, you have to find somewhere else.
I don't think that's what we're intending, is it?
Just on the question through the chief, just I didn't interrupt. If for say, for example, you gave them the authority to build it, use their footprint on in going to regional council, is set aside, this is the land available. If you have a mirror image of inside the stop bank and outside the stop bank, so if they want to have it on the outside the stop bank, try it. If the regional council then turn it down in that process, if it was a mirror image on the other side of the stop bank, well, would it speed up the process? Because if they said no to this, what about on the other side of the stop bank? Is it like they need something concrete so they can move forward, one, start fundraising, two, get consents underway, and long term get their building built. And in the meantime, they can carry on using the building they are. We'll have to house the boat. We could go to vote to say no, and then we're back to square one. But we're just trying to find a way, what can we do?
So my understanding is that they've got the building, they continue to use their existing building.
Yes.
They've got storage for the boat in town temporarily, whilst they move forward with their aspirations for a new building. And so that they wouldn't be demolishing anything until the new building was completely locked in, consented and funded to that stage.
That's what I thought
We
too.
just talked about affordable housing before. Back in the issue was about development in town. So we're talking about retraction of buildings that exist in town because of global warming, and then we're allowing Coast Guard want to build in a flood-prone area. Really, like this hypocrisy. Really, like they've got an. This is my opinion. I mean, I've fished out of that bar for 50 years. 27 years of that was commercial fishing. So I know that place inside out. My way of thinking, we've got a good Coast Guard building that needs some TLC. We put the storage of the new boat over on the other side of the stop bank, easy access to the boat ramp. And they wouldn't have a problem getting the funding to do that. That's my personal thought. I think this other idea it looks fantastic, but I think it's a bit 10 years too early. And if the need comes in 10 years' time, we've got
Then it'll be 10 years.
300, 400 boats working out of a bay, which I don't think so, but never know.
All right, well, we'll bring it in.
I think we just need to change it that council supports, take away the Violeta stuff, or now supports the need for Coast Guards now. And add a third one in there as well around working with council, just to cement that in there. Fine. solution moving forward. So we support the need for progress.
Supports the Coast Guard's proposal for redevelopment of the site. And third recommendation, because we need to vote in a third recommendation, how do you want to word it? That Coast Guard and Council continue to work closely together through this. That's going to happen anyway, but
So you're deleting the letter, the reference to the letter?
no, well, their ask is in the
I
letter.
suppose the thing is, if you put council supports the Coast Guard proposal for redevelopment of the site, and it's, you delete the bit about the letter, what are we actually supporting?
Yeah.
But they're looking for a bit more, something a bit more concrete than that.
Well, they need something that they can take forward to.
So we've, in the past, we've given them a letter to say, yeah, we support your aspirations.
Yes.
But they've already got that.
Yes.
They're not looking for that
No.
now. They've already got that letter behind them. They're looking for, yeah, we're supportive of what you're looking to do here, and we're looking to move forward with you.
Yes.
And to make that happen.
It's the landowner approval. So
Yes.
I think the council needs to be careful to keep its consideration within the landowner approval component. There's a whole load of other things that need dealing with, and in some of those instances, we're going to be the regulatory authority. So this decision is about the landowner component. And I think we also need to be careful not to, I mean, the Coast Guard know what they're doing. The Coast Guard are the Coast Guard, they're the experts in coast guarding. So I think council, without the benefit of having all the information that the Coast Guard have had, needs to be careful not to substitute its opinion for the Coast Guard's opinion around coast guarding, and just keep it to that narrow property approval process.
So maybe that's what should go in something about it.
But that's what it does say, Debbie. It's us understanding that we're jumping the gun. People around the table are jumping the gun. We need to just stick to approval. Steve?
I guess the problem, I think what people are afraid of is if you start down a track, it's pretty hard to turn around and go back there. My question is, how do you see the ownership of the building? So, like, it must have had some consideration, like, is that a rate building, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't gone into all the technicalities of that.
But I guess this is what I'm a little bit afraid of, you know, you take one asset, another asset from the rate and then who owns that, or how does it pay for it, you know, like, there are questions. Yeah, I understand you're just trying to give it a tick of approval, but it's pretty hard to do a U-turn once you have a track.
Well,
I think that's what you're afraid of.
yeah, but I suppose we can't get to that stage until we've had the initial landowner approval to move forward. So you can't then negotiate on something that may not hope. So for instance, you know, we're doing the master plan, and if we agree on a location for the building, and I'll discuss this at the workshop, we could potentially tie in the services that we're going to be putting for the master plan, and potentially public toilets go in the building. So there's lots of different cost savings that could come on Coast Guard if it's all done in conjunction with the master plan. But then how you negotiate that into the building, and it may be that they want to have 3 stories. They probably won't get to that in the near future, but they might get enough to have operational Coast Guard building. And then as they put extra stories on, we could say, well, actually, we want that for community use for 3 days a week or evening times, whatever it may be. And so that's all well down the track, but that negotiation is always on the table. And we haven't even got that far. It's just, can this get over the line? Are you happy as a landowner to start to move forward? And then that will start piecing. And that's why I said at the start, there'll be more decisions for council to make.
Yes.
To move forward.
Yeah.
And it may be that there's no decision, because it may be that it's not viable or feasible to have it when it comes to the regulatory side of stuff.
Yeah. Right. With Gerard's explanation, I think our recommendations are just fine as they are, unless.
You know, that was good explanation.
Yep.
I'm happy to move 1 and 2.
Happy to move as is. Do I have a seconder, please? All those in favour of our recommendations as they stand, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
Aye.
2 against, 3 against.
Well, I'm split between 1 and 2. Yeah, and it's like we should do 1 and then 2. Yeah, like, yeah.
So you do want to change 2? or,
We've already voted on it, so you can, if it fails, we can.
so which way did you vote? Aye?
I was thinking,
Oh,
I was thinking. I guess for me, it was just the word demolish that just stuck out. We've already been down that track. Once council to have a reputation of demolishing buildings. I agree with the concept,
yes,
but I do not want to see that building demolished, replaced in the same location. I'm happy about that, but not demolished. And it could be used by others. That's what I was saying on
It seems like the word demolish and just leave remove in their letter.
So,
Demolish.
but if you,
You know what we should do here, really, Lynn? It's not an idea, just, if we sat down with Coast Guard, us councillors, sat down with Coast Guard and had this discussion with them.
shall we leave it on the table?
Well, you've not voted.
I think so.
You've voted.
Until such time we sit down with them, and
We,
they might look at, they
we
might
vote,
look
we
at
did,
different options, and we might come up with different options. But
You voted and one councillor hasn't indicated a vote.
Yeah, but it hasn't.
it
been
doesn't matter, it
passed.
hasn't been passed. It's only a technicality.
My question to you, Barry and David, is why haven't you gone to them directly as voters yourself?
Because this is.
Because we haven't been asked.
Basically, because of it, was this, they wanted to be sort of.
Well, I know they've made a presentation to us.
Is that the one that passed the vote?
And at that time.
Did you vote?
What was on the table?
Shona abstained, so it's 3-3 and you had a pass.
I haven't abstained.
Ah.
I didn't vote.
but I said, all those in favour, please say aye, and there were 3. All those against, we ended up with 3.
Okay, I'm against.
Right. So it has failed.
But I would like us to sit down as councillors and have that discussion with Coast Guard as to our reasoning why. Clarify the issue of our concerns as to why we voted no. Can we on?
Agreed.
All right, that's going to be an interesting discussion because I'm not sure what they are, but that's good. Gerard, we voted no, and it seems that the word demolish is scaring everybody at the table for some reason. So the Coast Guard, what we're saying to the Coast Guard is, yes, they can have a new building, but they can't demolish the old one. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think, I think, haven't you just voted to say the
No.
Coast Guard's aspiration is no, you said no.
Yes.
You said, oh, we don't want you to demolish, if you can't operate in the current building, then we don't want you operating at all.
Yeah, that's what I feel we've done too.
Different options and different sites.
But that's what you voted on. So you've also voted on the master plan in terms of the Coast Guard building not being part of the master plan. And it's just the existing building and their aspirations. We should discount them now as part of the master plan and continue on as if they're not going to be there.
And that's where, that wasn't what we intended, is what I'm saying
No,
here.
that's not, that's not.
It's been blown out of
Yeah,
proportion.
absolutely, everyone supports the concept. It's the location is the issue, and there's another party that has to be at the table, not just the Coast Guard, making this decision.
But councillors, we've just voted that they can't.
We can have it back at the next.
But it's still there,
They're still there.
still in the building,
Yes.
still at least, why are they not there anymore?
Well, because they can't house their boat. So that means they will, I mean, I can't talk to Coast Guard what they'll do in relation to this decision, but they're saying the building's not fit for purpose, they need a new one. So if it's not fit for purpose now, it's not going to be fit for purpose next week. They're going to have to find another location.
That's what happened to the Lions, I guess, and other clubs. That's not what we discussed. That's, if you come up with that conclusion, you're not in the same room that I was in the discussion.
The reason we're at this stage is because they bought a new boat, it can't be housed under the old boat. If they hadn't bought the new boat, we wouldn't be having this discussion. You know, simple as that.
And I suggest we bring a report back to the extraordinary meeting later in the month.
Hmm,
And let's
Yeah,
just
that's-
put a bit of sense around
I'd
this.
like
And
I'd like to
Yes.
sit down with the Coast Guard myself and at the table, sit them down at the table and have a discussion with them.
do that in between, because we have got that extraordinary date available at the end of June,
That's a very good
and then
idea.
revisit.
when's the master plan coming back to council, Jerry?
Probably about 4 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time. Consultation, I think, closes this week or next week, and then a bit of time to go through it and reshape it.
All right, we move on.
Okay.
Shall we stop for morning tea? Yes?
We have visitors coming at 11.
Okay, good. We'll get some more done. We'll stop for morning tea here, if anybody's on the line. So I'm just going to switch the microphone off for about 15 minutes. Sound on? We are looking at our Parks and Reserve Service options for consideration, page 87. Thank you.
Yep, so I'll take it as read and answer your questions.
Well, all I can say is I thought I understood that different organisations are supposed to mow their own burns. That's how I understood things, that the council is not responsible for mowing all berms everywhere throughout Ōpōtiki district, but councillors, we've been asked a question. Are we wanting to maintain how it is? Are we wanting to maintain the same level of service but change our priorities? Or are we wanting to increase the level of service, which will need consideration and will bring financial implications into the picture? So, comments, please. Councillors.
Through the chair, I mean, just maintaining this, status quo is costing us more and more. We can't keep increasing levels. We struggle to keep the rates as they are. So maybe it's just, I know there's a backlit when I saw the result. It's just unfortunate, but you're right. You are, you have to mow your own frontage. That's just a given. But you maybe just a bit of communication. But now and again, we may just have to chip in. The last time I spoke to KK was outside the property on the corner of Sir John and 4th Street, and she could not get past someone's trees that were hanging over a footpath that she phoned me up, and I said I was going to get Steve onto it. I was ironically, I was across the road trimming trees, and she told me I was doing a good job. But the council stepped in, and I saw 2 staff members doing that. Not really our job, but after seeing what happened to 4K, trying to go past, which made me happy a little bit. The staff doing a great job now. I know that it's doing the same as possible and it's harder about.
Yeah, so I guess that's partly why I wanted to bring the report to you, because that's exactly the case. And I guess our guys are feeling quite a lot of flack coming through the service request, and they're telling us they're getting some quite abusive service requests for things that aren't actually funded or part of our level of service. So today is just about reasserting what our level of service actually is, so that we can defend those criticisms. And I guess over the years, it's been quite easy for mayors of the past, not present, to say, oh, could you just mow that? Could you just include that? Could you just include that? And before long, you've actually got a long list of things you're just including, and that adds to the cost. So yeah, when you have the word just in front of something, it usually minimises actually the impact of actually what there is on the organisation. So yeah, we'd be really happy if councillors are just reasserting that this is our level of service and this is what we'll do.
I didn't know that you were expected to keep your own burns mowed, so how did we know?
Runs from generation to generation.
Yes.
Just always what we've done.
And the
Yes, but is it just what's always been done?
Generation to generation,
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that that's as it should be.
It's a nationwide.
It's been done generation.
It's a nationwide convention.
Yes.
Auckland ran into some problems with people refusing to mow their burns.
So that's because then that comes as that issue of people when those great big rocks up on the what I call a nature strip, you call it verge. You know how they put rocks up so the people can't.
Just come, yes.
Yeah.
My grandfather was one of those.
They're allowed to do all that?
Yes.
And that's why they do that. Having pride in their properties.
And I know at the time that I was at Ōpōtiki College, the groundsman did outside always.
And the same, maybe they didn't know they had to.
Anyone that
Some
lives on-
laziness over some years, change of caretakers, etc.
Anyone that lives on a corner normally growls about it.
Because they do too, they've got,
Yeah, my dad was one of them for many years.
All right, so councillors, does anybody feel that we need to change our priorities or increase the level of service, looking at what is actually covered in the level of service?
I'm happy with the level of service that we're doing. I'm pretty happy that when I go and see these new gardens that we've put in place and the rose garden at the bridge, I think we've really improved over the last few years, so it looks good. We need to keep it up, we need to keep it up.
How,
Are they keeping up or are they like?
Well, I mean, I don't feel too happy with the criticism that they got publicly, but that's like all council workers. And they're just trying to do their job. And I think it's just the public's expectation levels are raised and heightened. And so at the moment, status quo is, a service request comes in, and then we will get to it as and when it fits into our work program, unless it's an urgent one. So the public expect us to go out there straight away, but to do that would take them off other work that we're doing. So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, obviously, Mark's going to turn down additional resources to help them, but I think it's just that realization from the public that there's only a limited pool of people, there's only a limited pool of machinery, and we're focused on trying to keep the main things functioning well, the main aspects of town, and trees and berms and stuff like that on our primary focus.
I think for me, I want to see what it looks like with an increase. The option C there for number 2. Just the current level of service.
What the cost is.
Like Barry says, we've got all these other nice gardens around the place as well. We do need to increase at some stage because those are new areas of maintenance for us.
So I guess this activity is one of those things you can throw as much at it as you want and have it as flash as you want. So it's when you say how much, well, it's kind of like, well, you tell us how much you're prepared to put in, and then the guys can go away and do as much as they can. So it's one of those things that it's really hard to come up with options. So yeah.
Like, is an increased level of service need outsourced work, or is it in-house work, or is it like?
That would be a secondary consideration, and Gerard always does it the cheapest way possible.
The best way.
Best way, sorry, most valuable. Sorry. Yes. And we've been really lucky in the last year to be using some of that News Task Force money and having our cadets and doing quite a lot of work for us reasonably cheaply.
Can I just ask, is the complaints that we're obviously getting, is that basically since COVID?
No, I just think, we always have complaints of people wanting things done the next day. It's just a lot more issues coming in now. Whether it's people who just got a heightened sense because there's more happening around town, or development happening, I'm not sure, or people just genuinely getting angry because of COVID. But we are getting a lot of additional service requests, and it's the follow-ups of why aren't we doing this? Why, that's what's quite draining on staff.
The reason why I asked that is because I had someone that complained about something would be pretty untidy, and I took it home. And Jerry said, there's a reason for that. And I thought, how would you know? Anyway, the reason for that was that the mowers needed parts, and they couldn't supply the parts because of COVID. So that was the delay in keeping some of those grounds a little bit tidy from what they have been in the past. Which is interesting, because I've never given that any thought.
Well, taking from the conversation, if we look at the recommendations, I think at the moment we're happy to maintain a current level of service, but we would also like another report, not necessarily but to look at what providing an increase in the current level of service might look like.
Do you think maybe you could articulate which areas you think you'd like to increase, like responding to service requests within 24 hours and doing more mowing, just because it's quite a big open book in terms
Yes.
of parcel reserves, machinery, and people. So yeah, good to know just where we can tailor that report a little bit.
Right.
Progress.
Mm.
You know, you could even see how much you want to increase your rates for to cover this.
Yes.
Feel comfortable with
Well, that's totally true.
just sort of keeping the status quo is getting so much dearer with fuel, parts, labour.
Mm.
So, I mean, we just have to maybe educate the public a little bit carefully about what's required of someone other than the town. And what's involved.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I'm happy to maintain the current level, but are you wanting, and we haven't really answered Jared's question as to if we're wanting to look at what an increase might look like.
I have got one
And the cost of increasing that.
coming along Bridge Street, you know, where the Gold service station is. Got that big open drain there on the left-hand side, going, looking out. Why, I reckon we could plant flax all along there, just tidy up that ugly looking
It's not
drain.
our land.
With the trees.
That's just a suggestion.
With the trees on the.
So, you know where the Gold service station is?
Yeah, drive past.
So going out of town, on the left-hand side, you've got that big open drain there.
Yeah, that's not our drain.
No, but we own the boom.
Not the drain.
No, but you know, along that beam, there, we could plant some flaxes. Would make that ugly little piece here look a bit nicer.
I don't.
No, it's not a priority, I'm just saying, I just
Yes.
get a costing on that, maybe. It's too dear to maintain, we won't do it or whatever.
What's our current response time to requests?
So it's, we basically kind of do it. on a
Health and
rolling
safety.
basis. So if it's health and safety, then we look to do it, you know, as quickly as we can, so tree damage, something like that, goes, it works. If it's something like cut a hedge down, then it just, the guys will be up there in 3 weeks' time, so they'll just do it as part of their run essentially, rather than one part of town to the other, just do a little bit of work. Yeah, so it just depends, and a lot of the kind of maintenance that we do in winter time. To do the plant and the kind of heavy growth and mowing goes in the summer and then the maintenance in the winter time. The catch up and kind of fill in jobs.
All right. My suggestion is, and I hope this is perhaps a agreement, if we look to maintain the current level of services and priorities, if we are all in agreement on that, and possibly if we request staff to prepare a report, but I think we need to have a conversation as to what else we would like to see. And I think realistically, we also need to know the cost of what else could be done. But that we need to put a bit of thought into that, because we're saying, yes, we want a higher level of service. Well, what does that look like? We probably don't even understand what we're asking, really.
So if you're looking for beyond what we currently have, then it will be additional staff.
Yes.
And if we have additional staff, we'll need additional machinery, like we don't have enough use, so they can go.
Yes.
So staffing costs and then whatever machinery costs associated with that.
Yes. And that is lots of rate increases.
Yeah, you're probably looking at.
Yeah.
150,000 for two members of staff and PPP and you or a vehicle to drive around and plus the equipment that they'll need to do whatever we're asking to do.
Right.
Are there any contributions that can help with it? Like if you got 26 lots to sell, yeah, that's their contribution, but cost reserves.
So the parks and reserve contributions for capital rather than operational, so yeah, there's nothing. It's all the way paid for essentially. We do
So
look
you
at
can't
all
always
things.
disputes and stuff.
It's based on the actual reserve itself. It's quite tight criteria, so it's like for the playground.
So it must be some sort of like
Not option. It's operational.
this time, just to leave the services as they are, and maybe when we've got a few more ratepayers, to take the burden of us, we can look at expanding it. But maintain the current level of service and priorities.
All right,
But even, just one more thing, even looking at cost-effective ways of the tools that they use as well. I don't know, going to electric stuff, even though I don't use electric stuff myself. Yeah.
They might also turn around and go, you expect me to do this with these tools? You want?
all right, I think, councillor Howe, if you'd be happy to, it sounds like you're putting forward 1 and 2A.
Yep.
Yes? And do we have a seconder? Thank you. And let's consider if we want to ask a report at another stage. Yes? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
I'll have to go against because I want to be.
You wanted B. A change of priorities. Let's talk about that and we'll work through.
Well,
Yep.
I'm happy to carry on, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, against it.
Okay. Moving on, item 11. Proposal for new road name. Te One Road. This is page 91 of our agenda.
Yeah,
Very happy with that?
Number one, great.
One road. Yeah, Louis, old Booth will be happy.
All right, Barry has proposed, Shona has seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Yep, delighted about that. Cool. And item 12 is our submission on the draft national adaptation plan. Page 100.
That's the table item.
It's the-
Yes,
it's
it
emailed
was
around
circulated and put on Stella yesterday as well.
Yeah, I like it. The submission. That's good.
I like the emphasis. I thought that was really good. All right, who'd like to put that? Thank you, Louis. Seconded, Barry. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, and carried. Item 13, we've got property eyesight library activity report with a COVID framework verbal update. And I'll just, before we move on to that, just want to say, Stuart, good to see you here. Thank you. We'll see you shortly.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, Anna.
Just our 6 monthly report always feels like it's a little bit after the fact. We're talking about June 21 to the end of December 21.
Yes.
I guess the key thing within the report is the impact of COVID in terms of our numbers and services and events and things we've delivered. You'll see under the eyesight the amazing work that the team did there in the community with the COVID coordinated approach here. So I want to recognise and thank the eyesight team for that. Further to that, just also want to let you know that we have accepted the resignation of Joe Hunt as our library manager after 8 years of service. A large part of Joe's role has been strengthening connection with our community and also realising the creation of our group. Joe's will be taking others with great, but we're very lucky that she agrees to continue to work with us. I'd like to acknowledge Joe's service. Any questions?
Does Joe want to be the driver of the mobile?
Very good question. I'll put that.
Is there anything you needed to highlight around the COVID framework?
So in terms of a COVID update, Minister Hipkins announced last week that we remain in orange, traffic light setting. So basically that means that masks are still required in public spaces recovery. In terms of cases, as of yesterday, there were 192 cases in the Bay of Plenty with 7 people in hospital. There has been stopped reporting numbers by TLA because of the low numbers being reported for the Tourism Ministry of Health.
Ah,
So the numbers are not necessarily indicative of what's actually happening within that community. There's some campaigns happening around trying to increase the reporting so that you
Yes.
can get a better picture. But I think anecdotally for them, they'll say that you know of people who are still catching COVID within our community, and the impact that's having on it. Both Whakatūria and Maora or Matatua are continuing to do COVID vaccination, albeit at a reduced amount, but you also alongside that, flu vaccination at the same time.
I still haven't had COVID.
Well done.
I noted the national percentages were 96% totally double vaccinated, and I think 76 for having had the booster.
Yeah.
But we're not up
No, so we're
over 90, are we?
No, we're set about 86 point something. for
Right.
Double vaccination, and our boosters are sitting around that 55%.
Right. Very long tail then.
No, that's what it is, just past.
And I didn't pick up when the government would be next considering changing from orange to, if we're lucky enough, maybe we'll have to go back up to red or down to green. That's not happening at the moment, is it?
It's a monthly review, a 6-weekly review.
Right. Thanks, Anna. Are there any other questions about what is in this report? It was quite funny when I read it. I thought, gosh, that seems so long ago that we're talking about what has happened way back. But
Just compliments for the eyesight and library staff. Really nice, very difficult times.
And our front of house staff also,
Yes, absolutely.
we had to deal with trying to make sure we're doing 2 people at a time and all those different things in the front of house. So I think all of those groups of front facing have done an amazing job.
well, I'll ask our CE to pass on our thanks from the council, please.
So a few preparations that went along as well.
Yes, for our event this year, they
Thank you. Shona, would you like to move we accept this? Thank you. Seconder.
Right.
Louis, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on, item 14, we have our Pōtiki Workforce Development Coordination update. Welcome, Barbara, Madeline. This starts on page 110. Morena.
Nice to be with you all again. Thanks. So Madeline's about to run you through the report updates since we wrote the report quite quickly.
Right.
But I just thought, reflecting on it and what's in the report, we've just come to the end of our 8th year of the Pōtiki Pathways to Work approach, which you'll remember Council and Whakatūria catalysed in partnerships with employers, organisations, funders, hopefully, just keeps growing. So I really want to acknowledge that the report today is part of a much bigger picture. And given that part of today's report is that we still don't have security about Mayor's Task Force Jobs funding going forward, we just know that we keep going with our Pathways to Work approach, and we've always found a way to make things happen. But hopefully MSD will come through. And I think one thing that Council can be incredibly proud of, particularly in the last 5 years, is your local procurement approach, because it's really affecting the DNA of our local businesses and and others who come in, they don't intend this. And it's really affecting who they employ. The Pathways to Work approach was always about growing our own workforce as much as we could. And it's given opportunities to so many of our local people who otherwise wouldn't have had work, and particularly our young people, and Portuguese seen as the rock star of apprentices at the moment in the background, which is pretty So, yeah, just real pat on the back to council for prioritising local procurement, both of workers, but also of wherever possible services and goods. And the most recent contact I had was yesterday from Livingston's, who they obviously got the library work, but now they've got other work locally, and they're about to take on 3 local apprentices, which is just fantastic.
Fab.
Yeah, so, yeah, long may it progress. So I'll hand over to Madeline to run you through that update.
Morena.
I'll begin with our fortnightly vacancies on the council website. So in our report, we said there was a bit of a dip during April, which we expected due to our late COVID peak. But during May, we've seen these fortnightly numbers start to recover and move back up to around about 30 vacancies listed every fortnight, which is encouraging to see. In regards to supporting key sectors to pathway under 30s into their workforce, we're encouraging employers who are keen to get their employees through Class 1 to make good use of our Portuguese Community Driving Mentorship Program. And as an example, in aquaculture, drone licensing assistance was started for 3 employees at the mussel factory. We anticipate several more on that, because we know there are many. In terms of our Mayor's Task Force for Jobs subsidies, on May 17th, Lynn and I delivered ETFJ certificates to Coastbound Construction, who was actually one of the first 5 businesses to sign Rangatahi onto ETFJ in 2020. And they were very pleased. One of them commented it's been a while since they received a certificate. On May 30th, yesterday, Lynn and I visited Magnus Lenny to meet their new automotive apprentice, Jordan. Jordan completed his defensive driving course through us and will be able to go for his full in June, and will support any further training as well. Photos from both of those visits will be in the next report. In regards to our cadets, our May 18th catch-up, which covered the council's long-term plan and annual plan and the processes around those things, was very well received, and the conversational nature of the learning was very digestible for the cadets, especially on a topic requested previously. So thank you to everyone who helped deliver that, Lynn, Aileen and Peter. In terms of our locally available vocational training, after a pause due to businesses not really being able to engage in training with COVID disrupting everything, we now have 3 courses booked for June. That's a site safe course, confined spaces and gas testing, and introduction to load splitting. We're taking registrations from local businesses for those courses and have 12 people booked so far across the 3 of them. We're also seeking other training that is wanted by our local businesses, as virtually all training has been on hold for a while. In regards to our Class 1 driver licensing, for the Portuguese Community Driving Mentorship Program, the May numbers look like 6 people passed their license test in May, made up of 5 restricted and 1 full. That brings the total licenses passed this year to 32 restricted and 22 full, or 55 in total.
Brilliant.
In regards to the Career Expo that took place on May 25th, it went really, really well. There were over 1,000 students from East Bay Clinic High Schools in attendance throughout the day. Our stall activities included a road code test, a toy EDA survey about students' current and future study or key goals, and speed typing test competition, which was very popular. We also produced some posters highlighting careers and jobs in local government, using some of our own staff as examples. And if you do have a moment, you're all hanging in our corner of the chambers, just over there. There's a poster of 3 of them, if you do want to have a look later on. And that is it from me.
And our last little point was that we're hoping this week to hear about our funding from MSD.
I have another Zoom with Minister Carmel with the core mayoral task force for jobs core committee. I think that's tomorrow night or Thursday night.
We got lots of questions yesterday, so.
Right.
I have to say, 30 days out from the funding ending, it's simply not good enough, is it?
But I think that is the pattern with MSD. I think, in fact, NGOs have been told MSD for a long time.
Yep.
Often the funding approvals and paperwork don't get done until some months into the new financial year. So
Well, I have to say, yes, MSD on our mayoral task force for jobs meetings, Zoom meetings with the other councils, they can't not have heard from all of us about the importance of what's happening, and just saying, really, we need, you know, a good 5 years, maybe more, of this type of work at this stage to ensure that we get the success we're going to. Well, we already have, but it can only increase. And I'm always delighted when I look at the numbers going down in the monthly job seekers work, really, to have that line going down since 2021 is actually really good to see. It's always a good indication that we are having success. Thank you. Are there any questions, councillors?
No, but just comment. Firstly, thank you to Kia Koe. I haven't seen you since the loss of your partner. It's great to have you back here doing the amazing work you do under such hard times. But it has been amazing to see such developments in the whole area. I had a great catch up with Maxie last week around the work that he's doing. You guys are all doing an amazing job, especially on the coast here with the 10 to 12 people that have been placed into employment under 30. That's an amazing effort, and that's down to all the great work that you guys are doing. So, thank you.
Well, I'd like to move that we accept this report. Can I have a six? Thank you, Shona. That's Lynn and Shona. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? And carried. Thank you. Excellent. Item 15 is the Chief Executive's report, which is on page 118.
So usual set of Lagoima requests, probably more than we've seen in the past. And you'll see that there's a number of them there that require our finance team to be looking and pulling information out of databases. But our core finance team have been busy producing the annual plan and also dealing with the annual report sitting over the top of it. So quite a lot of work sitting there in our finance team at the moment. And just the usual set of meetings. So happy to take any questions. Oh, actually, sorry, I also have attached there the Ombudsman's opinion in relation to the Whanara Bay item.
It was very good to see that there.
It was. Yeah.
Any questions, councillors? Any meetings you want to know more about? Good. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Debbie. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And now we move to item 16, LGNZ membership. Stuart, could I call you forward? Would you like to come and join us here, please? Thank you.
Susan was supposed to be here, but she's got delayed.
Were you wanting to wait for Susan or?
Thank you, Your Worship. She's not far away.
Okay. All right. Oh, great. Lovely.
Or tea.
Would you like?
Coffee or tea? I'll get it.
But happy to start the conversation.
Lovely,
if
thank
that
you.
suits
Yes.
you.
So I actually brought this report to our council around our LGNZ membership. And I have to say, it would be honest to say it is because we're feeling quite aggrieved around the Three Waters and the conversation around this. And I actually really appreciate that you've come to us to have a conversation here. And although part of what you'll be talking about may even alter what we put forward as our recommendations, so I appreciate your willingness to come and sit and talk with us. And one thing I did say is we should be clear in our minds as to the benefits we have as an organisation, our organisation being part of the LGNZ organisation. So I was wondering if you'd be happy to talk to that and to tell us why LGNZ is the right organisation for us.
Thank you, Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for the opportunity. We've been living in a really strange operating environment for the last couple of years, which I think we all understand. And last week I was down the West Coast. We always try and meet every single council around every 18 months, and we've been unable to travel. And it was at that point I really realised how relationships between our organisation and our members has been affected by the inability to have face-to-face meetings. Yes, technology is great, it has its place. But when I sat down and spoke to mayors or CEOs or councils one-on-one, what a difference, what an absolute difference. So I just want to first of all acknowledge, the challenges that all councils have at the moment. And they're all slightly unique, obviously all 78 authorities, 77 are members of LGNZ. And as I've constantly said on the Zooms, first of all, I better introduce myself. I'm Stuart Crosby, the president of LGNZ. I live just down the road, a place called Papamoa Beach. I've been involved in local government for a very long time. I started on a small community council at Papamoa. Then reform happened in 1989. Got to sit in the big chairs in Tauranga City for a while. I was mayor there for 12 years. Now I'm on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. I've been president for nearly 2 years of LGNZ. The reason I said that is I've never ever in those 30-odd years seen the challenges facing local government and the threats to local government in all of that time. And I don't say that word threat lightly. When you've seen the suite of reforms, and you get to see a lot of them, but sitting underneath that is a lot more detail and a lot more other reforms that have an impact on local government. So, getting to LGNZ, we've had quite a change of LGNZ between Susan Roche, our relatively new CEO, been in job about 18 months, has completely rebuilt the team. As you're aware, if you follow, and Neil and you and Aileen and other councillors have a strong involvement in those service exception, Billy and others. You've seen the breadth of what we're faced with and the changes that LGNZ has made. So we've completely changed our whole approach to things because when I became president, it became obvious to me that the way we were going about things wasn't fit for the future. It was really fit for the past. And with that, it's only just starting to bed now. Now, I need to be upfront. I do appreciate that a number of councils are grumpy with LGNZ and the manner in which we've approached the water reform in particular, so I acknowledge that. If we had time, I think also on the other side, LGNZ has been grossly misrepresented in terms of its actual work and its actual position. But we'll put that aside. I really want to talk about the operating environment we're in and the threat, as I said, to local democracy. So our new strategy has a range of principles to it, which are all available. Our main one is in that space of local voice. And I do appreciate in the water space, that's been the biggest challenge. And you may have felt that LGNZ was on the side of the government. I can assure you, we are not. And we've gone to extraordinary lengths with the support of the sector to make sure that in the government's model, which we never agreed with, still don't today, that we can claw back as much as we can your local influence and your local voice. So
Welcome.
That's absolutely essential. Colleagues, this is Susan Freeman Green, our Chief Executive, come from Wellington.
Thanks for making it.
It's nice to see you. Apologies for underestimating the drive. But I'm here.
So when I had the privilege of becoming president, the last thing I said after being elected is we are stronger together. And yes. I mean that sincerely. Because of the operating environment where we have a government that is doing incredible policy change that will impact on Otaki in your community, as it will for the rest of Aotearoa. It presents, and in a very short time frame, that suits their time frames, not our time frames. It presents unbelievable challenges to all of LGNZ and all the membership. And what I've seen over the last 12 months in particular is you've had your business as usual you've had to deal with. You've had extraordinary weather events. And we had one last night when I drove up, the rivers were quite high. And then the biggest suite of reforms any government has placed on our sector and our communities since basically 1989. In fact, these are bigger, actually.
And more of them.
Yeah, 1989. So how do we go about managing all that? Well, as I've just explained, Susan, we've got a whole new strategic way about approaching the operating environment we're in. But getting back to the stress that I'm seeing our sector under. And some of the mayors I've been talking to lately would openly say there is just so much on our plate, and I've just had a quick look at your agenda, and you're dealing with so many things that they don't have the time or the capability and the capacity, often not all the time, actually participate in this change to a level that you should be participating in. There's only so much people can actually do. That's where we, I believe, LGNZ plays our strongest role. Now, while it's in Wellington, and it's not too far from the Beehive, LGNZ is from the far north all the way down to Stewart Island in reality. And that's what we do. And looking at your agenda, there is a range of initiatives there that you're deeply involved in, that we're deeply involved. And I could talk about the National Adaptation Plan as an example. Congratulations for submitting it. Such a short time frame, such a big issue that affects Otaki in your community. I might add I'm on the regional council. Don't hold that against me. But any regional council, but we get to see the risks that all our communities have. And again, that's just the beginning of a journey in that space that LGNZ will be heavily involved in. Getting the technical with working with the bureaucrats, who are really nice people, and I mean that sincerely. But what I've found is, from my experience, is the people in Wellington don't often get how it impacts on the ground. And that's where LGNZ comes in and our membership comes in to help them make good policy. Because they're prone to make good policy from the Wellington point of view, but it doesn't happen on the ground. And we spend an inordinate amount of time
doing that. We have changed our philosophy, and I've been on the National Council of LGNZ for a while now, and we tended to be adversarial. Didn't like it, we just said so, we didn't like it, jumped up and down, made submissions often too late to the select committee, and that was that, things carried on. I might add that we are non-partisan, in other words, we don't care with respect to who the government is, because we know governments change all the time, coalition governments. What we care about is their policies and the outcomes those policies have on communities. That's what we really care about. So we made a deliberate decision and it started with the former President, David Cullen, and the former CE, Malcolm, but really driven now by Susan, that we want to be inside as best we can, giving your voice to those changes. And it's not easy because, as I said, it's Zone 2. You know, what might be favourable to a politically, as an example, may not be favourable somewhere else. So it's really hard for LGNZ to please everyone. So look, we have a constitution that tells us to operate in the national interest. That's what we endeavour to do, and for the long term, not necessarily tomorrow. So we've had some success in shifting our strategy to helping shape government policy of the day, be it RM reform, Three Waters, a whole range of things. I just want to touch on the resource management reform. While we're absolutely focused on Three Waters, as you should be, this RM reform is a bigger risk, in my view, to a polity than the other reforms. So again, getting back to our key principle of supporting and promoting local voice, I, with some others, as you did as well, I'm assuming, made submissions to the select committee on the first draft of the book. And as a result of that, Minister Parker, that's a whole sector submission, not just LGNZ, has made changes, is promoting changes, I should say. And that would not have happened unless we were in that advocacy space right at the beginning. Otherwise, we would have been fighting and fighting, either in the middle or at the end. And we are constantly looking to get at the front end of those conversations. And yeah, it's kind of a top-down, bottom-up approach, engaging with our sector to say, this is what the government are proposing, what do you think? Bringing that all together and then advocating that strongly. And as I said, look, also the authorities may not agree on a position, but we do take that long-term view. And there are some other issues as well that I could talk about, but frankly, I'd rather ask questions if you have any. What I would encourage you to do is stay with LGNZ. And Tom, I think it's about 0.4% of your OPEX. I would argue over time that's pretty good value, because the risk is if we break away, governments would really like that, because we can be quite a nuisance at times in the interest of your communities. And the weaker we are, the stronger they become. That's not a helpful position to be for the local government sector. So I'm not sure, Susan, you want to add anything, but I really prefer to just have a conversation and answer any questions. Your worship, in the first instance.
Thank you, Stuart. Would you be happy for me just to say a couple of points?
Yes, please.
We'll open the floor. I guess I just want to say it's really fantastic to be here, and genuinely, we are very excited, and Stuart probably said this at the outset, to be able to get out and see you and have these conversations, which is so much better face to face. I also just want to say, talk about your value to the sector as members, what what you do and some of the examples you've given, your ability, getting this harvest project through. I've seen a very draft of the story we're doing on that, which just tells an incredible story of local input and resilience and, fight, if you like, against the forces to get that through over a really big period of time, and I'm looking forward to sharing that. But, examples of you are really important to the sector as a whole, that it's not just about what we can do for you, it's what together you can do for each other in some of these ways. So I just wanted to say that. I also want to say I absolutely understand, that there is, you have been hacked off with how we've approached Three Waters, and I don't want to spend any time talking about that. Stuart's touched on that, however we could. Happy to answer questions on it, but acknowledge that, and there are things that we could have done better. And I just want to really acknowledge that. And we're learning all the time, and this is once in a generation reform. Apart from not even apart from just relying on Google in terms of the time I needed to get here, I also had, which was stupid, I also had I was run by a reporter who wanted to know how we were supporting the sector through all this massive change, and is it like, how can anyone engage? And I said we just have to really, really focus on the most important. The one thing that's common to all communities in a different way is getting their voice into the system. Whatever it is, when you lose your when the reform makes you lose your connections to your communities in whatever form, that's problematic. So being able to really, so it was really timely to come in and hear Stuart talking about exactly that when I came in, and just the thing, we're working on heaps of reform. We can talk about all of that in terms of getting that local voice in there, and we also, we like to think, and we've got a whole plan around how we add value in all sorts of other ways. And we're really looking forward to a whole new, for example, a whole new, induction program for new councillors, which has been informed by what the sector's told us worked. It didn't work with what we did 3 years ago. There was a lot that didn't work. So we're getting that up and running, and I think we're just increasing the value. The planning is one thing, but demonstration is going to be more. But on that note, I just wanted to say those introductory things and say it's so good to be here. And
thank you, Susan. Yes, councillors, any questions? This is our chance to ask the toughies.
I have a question. Just got a comment. Thank you very much for coming. I didn't realise you're coming today, to be honest.
I sent it in an email.
I must have missed, but look, I was reflecting that we were on the agenda, we were talking about being no regrets, like it's in here, and it felt better for me that it was in there, just realising the frustrations. I totally understand where you're coming from, and we are stronger together. So turning up today, it's sort of
Thanks, Councillor Dave. It's Susan, said we're starting to travel now, and it's just making a big difference. And I'm sure you've seen it in your communities as well. You're not having that face to face. People assume things. There can be misunderstandings. I completely understand. I think we need this next 12 months to really bed in the new strategy that has been approved by not just National Council, but it's not our thinking. So the broader membership are now thoroughly brought into, whilst we're, you know, under this massive change, and look, if there's a change of government, the change is going to be, because there's no doubt in my mind, we've been, as a sector, been asking for reform in many places. We didn't expect it all to come at once, the way it's been done and in the timeline. So we've been really compressed in terms of getting good outcomes. But my view is that local government, as it stands at the moment, is not sustainable moving forward because of the funding in particular. So, you know, our roles and functions have changed dramatically over the last 30 years. The levels of service, which you're well aware of, has gone up and up and up, and yet the funding levers have stayed exactly the same for about the last 130 years. And with this project called the Future for Local Government, which we, LGNZ, pushed hard on. In fact, I went to the Minister and Prime Minister and said, you cannot go through 3 waters changes or RM reform without our sector having a clear line of sight of what the future could be for councils and communities. And we basically wrote the terms of reference for that, and you are getting engaged in it. But I still have a very deep concern that if we fragment ourselves in that future horizon, we won't be as strong as we should be. That really worries me. There is, you know, local government, in my view, has not had its due respect it should have from any government of the day, any colour. While they sit in Wellington and your MPs might engage with you a little bit, it is local government that do the work on the ground. And it's often local government that has to implement central government's policies. That's why, as I said, we're working hard to get inside that decision-making process at the beginning, and we've had some success. Today, for example, right now, there's an announcement with rural water supplies, which has a huge impact on the
Yes.
huge impact. And we've been in there with our colleagues helping shape some of that. And the outcome has been, hopefully, at least from the working group, a sensible, pragmatic approach to rural water supplies. And we will work incredibly hard, as an example, to make sure the government pick that up. So it's a mixture between the independent water regulator and these water groups that they get on the ground.
That's 50% of our rate holders here in our district are affected by what's coming out today in that rural.
So I'd like to think that our sector, supported by LGNZ, has had a massive input into that outcome. And last night, because we get a bit of a heads up, you know, my media release was supporting the local private water suppliers staying in that space for obvious reasons. The council ones may go with the new groups, but there are cases where they should go back to the community if they've got irrigation, stock, etc. So I think the working group, as an example, have come up with a really pragmatic approach. And we're doing that kind of stuff day in and day out. We do our best to communicate, but we know it's not getting to every elected member. Every week, you know, there's more stuff comes out, you're inundated by information, and that's all. Our IT system is a bit antiquated, shall we say? And so we are looking and always asking ourselves, how can we engage with you better and communicate with you better, particularly through this quite dramatic time of, you know, local government.
I'm actually aware personally that I feel I'm getting lots of information because I attend the Zooms. And then I normally send your notes and so on to my councillors. So hoping they are keeping up to date with stuff as well. I do have a question, and it's, how would you see that government, this government, it has to be this government we're talking about, what indicates that there's a shift in their wanting to listen, and also a shift in a more trusting, I think trusting is the word I want, trusting relationship building between local government and central government.
Trust is the word.
Yes.
Worship.
So what indicates that that is changing for the better, I would hope?
Oh, look, I think it's variable between the issue and the minister, because they're humans and they act differently. We are quietly winning, but we've got a long, long way to go. I wouldn't sit here and say that it's all bells and roses, because one of our jobs is to push back. So you can imagine at the central government level, they think something has to be fixed. They develop a plan, and then they generally do start engaging. And then our sectors, supported by LGNs, that comes along. So, well, don't like that. That's actually not going to make the change you think it's going to make. You get down this direction or that direction. Well, look, at a national council level, we're always engaging with prime minister, ministers, etc., because they're the ones I think that are critical. The trust is often not as strong as it should be at the officer level in the departments, and you all probably face that because they're given a job to do and they go, and some of them, not all of them, do not like people like us coming along and challenging some of the policy parts, because the devil is always in the detail. I generally think they're all well-meaning, and we've asked for these reforms, as I said before. So the trust is a two-way thing, and we work incredibly hard to build that trust and confidence, but at the same time, push back where appropriate.
And if I could add your worship to that, I think, building trust, and if you think about it in all relationships, it takes a lot longer to build and to grow and to hit the, stops and starts and little bits of, jumping to conclusions from one or the other side about lack of trust, and we both expect to the other, and as opposed to earning it. So it takes a while to grow. And so I think what we've done through this new approach is to set an intent that actually, if we can start to trust each other and be, credible and consistent, as Stuart has said, then we can have actually much tougher conversations. And we've had some really tough conversations with central government that they would have maybe ignored in the past. So that's my indication that it's growing. But I think, as you said, it's variable and it's going to take a while to build. And I think it's just, central government, so we build this, create this intended partnership in a general, credible way, and then something happens that just seems to go completely back on what our expectations are, like in the metro area intensification piece. And so that's like, well, then we can't trust them, so we might as well retreat. So, we just have to keep holding each other to account. Like, we have to hold central government to account. Hang on a minute, you've said you'll engage with us on all this. You've said that we need to be really fully involved in future local government. So if you only give us 1 month to engage with the sector on it, that's not fair. That's not something that gives a sense of trust.
An example of that was in civil defence and emergency management, where the trifecta process was going to start, and I literally literally just walked out of the office of the minister, who said no more major reforms. And then we get this, it's like, hang on, that's not what we had agreed to, because our sector's under so much pressure. So to their credit, and Mr. Allen, it was pushed back until everyone had a reasonable time frame to get their head around, again, the centralisation potential of some policy work in civil defence. And we all know civil defence begins and ends really at the local level. So, you know, that was an example, I think, of our new arrangement working. But from time to time, you know, politics comes into play and they fall off the wagon. And but overall, we are making quite progress. But as Susan said, it's not going to happen. It's going to take some time.
So from our perspectives, you know, we're reviewing our membership to the LGNZ on the basis that we felt we got let down over the Three Waters quite badly. We're a small council, but our infrastructure has always been kept up to pace. So it's not a huge cost for us to be moving forward as a council. And that we felt like the review is the reason because we felt that we got let down by local government New Zealand voting in favour of Three Waters. And that and the small is now nearly a split, 50-50 split, and the council's disagreeing with it. And the fact is that we're going to be councils that are going to be worse off under the new identity. Is that we feel like you've sold us down the road basically, and that democracy never took place in the sense that we didn't have a chance. The 66 councils of New Zealand didn't have a chance to vote on the reforms as such as local government New Zealand voted for us without complaining. So we talk about democracy and trust. I think we've got a little bit hurt there. You know, we've got people out in our community now saying, you know, this is daylight robbery. Why are you letting them do it? Well, we're only a drop in the ocean when it comes to local government New Zealand. But yeah, we felt let down quite badly from local government New Zealand, hence the review of our membership. So how did it come about that, you know, we weren't actually consulted in?
So, just 2 minutes to explain.
Yes,
please.
please.
I think it's one of the biggest misunderstandings of the whole thing, and it's our fault because we didn't take this time. So around last July, you know, we believe that the government were going to announce it's all in with their vital. If we take a step back, some of the hurt that's been felt by our sector is you have a choice of being opting in or opting out.
Yes.
Then you're all assumed in, but you could opt out and then bang, you're in with their life or not.
Yes.
So we believe that around July they're going to come to our conference and announce that. I don't think that's quite right. And so I went to both the Minister and the Prime Minister and said, all the councils just been given a ton of data, you recall that, right? And we want time to analyse that. We also took the opportunity, and this is the dreaded heads of agreement, to say, to bind in some of those requirements. So if we go back to the heads of agreement, which we have failed to explain, we agreed with a program of Three Waters change. Everybody, most people, I should say, believe there has to be a change. So in there, it talks about a program of change. In there, it talks about objectives that we will want to achieve in that change, which is more people having safe drinking water, environmentally friendly wastewater and stormwater.
And money and investment.
And money and investment.
Yeah.
We never, this is what we've failed to communicate, we never in that agreement, which is public knowledge, agreed to the model. In fact, if you read it, there are a whole lot of areas we disagree with the model, and we've been working really hard to disagree. Why couldn't we engage? Because there's about $2.5 billion of resources going to councils. That had to be a cabinet decision. And we had to sign a declaration.
It has happened at pace at the last minute, a non-disclosure.
Non-disclosure.
The last couple of weeks.
So put yourself in our position. We could have done nothing, stood outside, like we used to do. and we debated this hard at National Council, and it wasn't completely unanimous on that, or we get in there and do what we believe was the best interest of our sector. And today I believe that was the right decision, because if we hadn't made that decision then, we'd be having a completely different conversation today. That bill would have been enacted by now, and it'll be into stage 2. And it's only going into the House shortly. So huge, we've been, in my view, misrepresented on our true position, and I take responsibility for that as president. We failed to engage with our sector post that, as to the reasons why, the position we were actually in, and they've never, and to this day, we still not agree with the government's model. That's why we've been pushing back as hard as we possibly can, with the support of the sector in a whole range of areas. And as you're aware of, bringing the community voice closer, the accountability and responsibility of these entities closer to the owners, which is still the councils, etc. And now the rural water issue, and the next one that we've been working with is how you link the regulation, i.e. your district plan, council's regional policy statements, all that growth stuff, with these new regulations. So our fault, we didn't explain it properly, but I can give you my assurance that we did not and do not support the government's model. Now, Susan rightly pointed out, the government failed miserably in their own communication. I think we all accept that. And the other offensive thing was those cartoon ads that really upset our sector. Because, Melanie, you know that our sector was still had a very open mind about this whole thing.
Yes.
And the, frankly, betrayal of not having your choice to opt in or opt out, I know that has made a huge difference in the attitude of our sector. And a lot never got over that. As I said, I've been visiting councils, and I absolutely get the concern about your own service delivery. In other words, pipe breaks across the road, who's going to fix it? The ability, because you're in a growth mode, which is fantastic, both in residential and industry, will they be serviced properly? These are all the things that we've been asking for more detail on, and will continue to do so. Because I genuinely believe that the government and officials had no idea how complicated Three Waters really is. They're finding out now, and so hopefully I've explained that we were stuck in between a rock and a hard place, and we chose, in our view, to do the right thing. But today, I believe we did, because if we had just sat outside and did nothing, we'd be having a different conversation today, as I said.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing was that we were facing this happening and being made mandatory, and council having no say. And that's what every signal that we got from the government was. And it was like, and we had some, like we were just beginning all those Zooms, so we were beginning to talk about it, but we didn't communicate about the heads of agreement, because they put that on us for the last 7 minutes. Before that, they were saying, okay, if this is going to happen, then what's the best deal for the sector? What can we negotiate? What's the best possible deal? And what can't we agree with? And we can't, the national, the steward and national council can only bind, they can't, national council, they're the only ones that agree, they can't speak for all councils. So we carved out the right every council to protest and challenge and push. We carved out the areas that we were hearing were the biggest concern around, local voice, connection to communities, planning, the rural schemes, and time. So we carved out all those things. I reckon that the minister really wishes. I feel a little bit like, oh my goodness, it's really hard, because I reckon the minister wishes that she hadn't engaged with us, because it could be all over and done with by now. But because she engaged with us in that kind of way, it's a better model than what was on the table. Not perfect, lots of challenges, but it's better than it would have been. And that was kind of like
But the government were going to go through hell or high water.
Hell or high water, I think that's,
From your point of view, you're probably better, like,
Yeah.
explained that you were better to sit at the table and not be at the table.
the best of
Get
it,
some
and get
compromises.
something, get compromises and get something, you know, like,
We're gonna continue to do it.
keep
I
doing it,
understand that.
yeah.
Yeah, the other bit I forgot to mention was because the government did an appalling job, and the minister has, I think, acknowledged it in their own communication of their own policy. That left it to LGNZ to do it, and mayors, chairs. And so what I mean by that is, here we are in a very difficult position of explaining the government policy that we actually don't agree with to our sector, and then we get accused of being cheerleaders for the policy, which we're not. So, but again,
And that's that's actually a really interesting and constant challenge, because when we talked to the sector, we did some research at the beginning of last year before all of this, and saying to the sector, what do you want from us? They said, oh, we want a better relationship with the central government. One thing you said to us, and we want you to help us. We've got so much going on. We want you to help us by explaining what the government's doing, so we know where to engage. And then, you know, the challenge of that is the flip side of that is that when we explain, it looks like that's what we're supporting it, and when we are in the tent, so we can get the best outcomes, it looks like we're on the side of, as opposed to, you know, in there to get the best.
I also think that councils like ourselves have played a part by forming our own protest group and working through what we saw as important to our communities. And maybe it's not that we are radical, it was that we were more intent on protesting very, very hard against the four entities model, because we know it's just rubbish for us. But and I really think that also helped, because we were able to collectively show the government that there is this huge number of people and councils throughout New Zealand, not a majority, but who are really against this model. Yes. So I don't think our doing what we have done, I think that as I remain absolutely convinced is the right thing for us against this particular model, because we know it won't work here for us.
I agree. I think at a critical time it helped. You'll be aware, you know, the Doug Martin, the working group did make a lot of changes, and people have different views on those changes, but I think they're substantial. The fact that C4LD was there at that time, I think was good pressure on the government of the day and it is going to be built into the new first bill. It was good pressure, you know, so I wouldn't say good cop, bad cop, but, you know, we are inside the tent working as hard as we can. C4LD are there presenting other alternatives and options, but they represent a lot of the sector.
Yes.
And look, I've had no issues with C4LD. I've had some issues about some of the tactics, but that's politics, I get that. But I think working together, you know, we are shifting the dial in the right direction. So not one group can do it on their own.
And I think another value piece is that it tests the model again. You know, it's an opportunity for so the working group who have made, you know, they have to actually genuinely look at those proposals and try and articulate why they, you know, in terms of what where they landed, it didn't work, but they were actually able to, there's something to push against, if you like.
Yes.
And you may not be aware, Susan might tell me what the saying is, but I believe that C4LD, while their model's being rejected, have not had a good reason why. And you deserve to be had it explained as to why it's been rejected. And Susan's working behind the scenes with officials try and make sure that happens.
Mm.
And that's a genuine offer to say, here's a big chunk of our sector saying, we don't like the model, we've potentially got an alternative, you've rejected it. You need to know why.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
You need, face to face for some CEOs, some mayors, the core group, and have it explained.
Mm.
And that's what we're doing behind the scenes, as best we can,
Right.
to support CKLC and get it, that explanation, on the table.
Thank you. Mm. Any other questions, councillors?
Yeah, so if we get a change of government, and they said they're going to reverse the decision, will there still be reforms?
Well, first thing, what will be LGNZ's position? We'll look at what they're proposing, and again, so it's in the best interests of the communities and the councils. So that's the first. There's a lot of debate about that. I believe that the actual structural issues might change a little. There will be a reform. I think it's just a number of entities. This is the interesting thing between the government and a lot of our sector. We're arguing really about is it 4 or is it 10 or 11? So that's where the flex could be. But again, if you're going to do a reform, it has to work for the interest of your community and councils.
They've come out and said blatantly that they're going to reverse it.
They absolutely have, and that's one of the questions. I was at an industry breakfast the other day, because I used to work with the engineering sector, and the minister talked to that group. This was about 6 weeks, 2 months ago, and one of the engineers said, so what happens to this reform when you lose and the next government comes in? What's going to happen? And she said, and I don't know whether she want me to quote her, but she did say it publicly. She said, well, they're already boots on the ground, right? So this is already happening. It's not waiting till 24 July and then going to kick in. There are plans, there are transition arrangements, they're appointing boards and CEs for these new entities. So she said the legislation will be passed and it will be baked in really hard. So, that's what she said. So it will be, even though there's a lot of talk about it being reversed, it won't be that easy to reverse it. And it won't, and I can imagine, and it's just me personally speculating, I can imagine a scenario where, the opposition gets in and they just want to blame the previous government and take and who's done all the hard work, blame them for all the inevitable challenges of getting it up and running, and just tweak around, play around the edges.
I think the independent regulator standards of water, that doesn't need to change, because we've always needed that.
Yeah, we all need that.
Yes.
Yeah, and everyone 100% agrees with that.
Yeah.
But what that will do is it will put pressure on councils in a way that hasn't happened before. So, like around the country, regardless of whether you believe the data about the water notice and the numbers and stuff, it will put, that the leader of that builds Bayfield, he will put pressure in a real way once councils get up to speed on councils to actually hold you to the standards.
And get up to standard.
Whereas it's been able to be under the radar.
The Ministry of Health never did.
Which the Ministry of Health never did. So he's pretty determined, and if you've ever heard him talk, and it's really worth hearing him talk, he's pretty, he's fair but intimidating. He's going to do it, he's going to wield the stick. And he'll give everyone time, but it will be uncompromising. So, and they'll be looking for standards and sustainability. And if you ask the government, like, well, what is the point? They will say, why are we doing all this? They'll say that what they've done, what they've tried to do, regardless of what we will think about it, is to try, if there is this, and we can argue about whether the billions of dollars that they've talked about is the right figure, but across the whole Route 2, there's so much money needed to get the technology and the monitoring and everything up and running, that this four entity model is basically their way to fund it. Regardless of whether we think it's good or whether it will work, that's to get enough borrowing power into the water for the future. Not probably, like lots of, there are quite a few councils, and it's great, who are actually doing really well and have got really good water supplies and are doing fine. But 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that's more the challenge of some breaking hidden infrastructure. That's what they say, that's their reason. Again, I'm explaining what they say, which is why they're so committed. And you will hear the minister. She's not just doing this as an infrastructure, but she genuinely believes that this is what her communities need. She's prepared to take the political cost of losing to get it done. Better or worse, that's her. It's like a value thing.
Thank you.
We're not seeing any backing off.
No backing off. Probably if anything doubling down. Yeah. And I guess there's just the one thing that probably is so hard to explain, but it was seeing that up close and personal that made us really think, oh my goodness, like we would be irresponsible if we weren't trying to get the best deal for the sector and trying to make the model as good as it can be. It's really simple, even if for all the challenges and all the mistakes we made in that process, that was the intent.
And I might add, I think we've all learned from that, and you see our advocacy in the RM space is completely different. And it will be. Just one final thing, Neil, and I know in your recommendation, an option could be to consider the subscription less the C4LD. Our rules say that it's a subscription. So it's not like a ratepayer coming in and saying, well, I've got my library, so I'm not going to pay that now. We're bound by the rules of the Constitution, so just and we're happy to leave if you want to have that conversation.
It is, that's fine.
Amazing project.
Yes.
Irrespective of.
Are they having lunch with it?
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's fine. Anything else, councillors? We'll move on.
So really, you sum it all up, it was pretty disrespectful of the government to go ahead with those reforms without combining in with the government of New Zealand. Should have gone to you first, you confided with your councillors, that's how democracy works, we come back to you and
Pretty undemocratic. You're right, the three reforms are back to front. Future local government, what is our role and function moving forward should come first. Before you even consider infrastructure changes or resource management changes. And they admit that it's back to front, but
it is back to front.
We've got to live with their decisions.
Right, we will look to the recommendations on page 128 and in
I move recommendation 1, however 2 and 3, I think personally, I would like to see us stay with LGNZ. It's better for us to be at both tables than at no tables.
and I'm happy with that too. Yes?
We better stay at the table.
Yes.
Throw the baby out of the bathroom.
Good.
Just one question. Would we qualify as a small rural one? What's the point?
No, we're not quite low enough on our numbers. If it had been 5,000, yes, we would have, I think. Thank you. Yes, I was just going to say I'm happy to drop recommendation 2 and 3. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your trust.
So here's some explanation coming from the Mouth.
And we will, do we need to vote that we're dropping recommendation? We're just receiving the report. I'll second that. And we're all agreeing that we're receiving the report? End of. Passed.
And if I could just say.
Yes,
Now you've made a political decision. At an operational level, LGNZ are invaluable to us. And Peter built the LTP basically with the guidance packages that come out, the stuff you probably never see that flies under the radar. Both Taitawara and LGNZ are absolutely essential in the functioning of the organisations. Also add that over the last decade, decade or more, we've spent a huge amount of effort to put the focus on this place. And right now, LGNZ focus really is on us and those two wonderful awards sitting out there in the entranceway. So just really thank LGNZ for all they do for the staff and for recognising our big project.
Thank you, and thank you all for giving us the time to come and talk and giving us the trust to carry on. Thank you.
thank you.
We've got lunch. Oh, we haven't. We'll be here in 5 minutes.
Yes. So we're going to just pause for lunch in a moment, or?
And can I just make one more statement, is that Jared is, just to let you know that Jared's reducing to part-time hours, given Sarah is now the big star in the family with the big job. So yeah, just letting you know that as of 1 July.
Thank you. So we'll just pause the meeting. Is that all right? Or do we? Yes, we'll adjourn. Sorry? Just close, do the resolution.